I want you to understand that you are addressing the highest panel of our Defense Force leadership, and it is of utmost importance that they learn what happened as soon as possible. Yes, I understand, the figure on the view screen stammered, their voice quivering with either the pressure of speaking before such a significant assembly or the gravity of the recent events. It was hard to tell. The chamber for the highest panel was not lavish. In fact, it was relatively small and not truly reflective of the far-reaching decisions made there, yet its use had grown from tradition, deeply embedded in history, so the 12 beings from 5 different species had to crowd together at one end of the table, all struggling to see the antiquated 2D view screen. One of the 12, the same who had spoken earlier, addressed the being on the screen. Please confirm. You are stationed at a scientific outpost with a population of approximately 1,000? That is correct, Commander Reese replied. You mentioned there were no casualties? Yes, that's correct. There were none. That has never happened before. How did you manage it? It wasn't us. We asked for help from the humans. Humans? The speaker repeated, unfamiliar with the term. The being on the screen made an embarrassed gesture. I mean species ZZ9. There was a murmur among the 12 as information about the species appeared on the handheld screens in front of them. ZZ9 was an uncontacted species, incapable of interstellar travel. Even their first interplanetary expedition, a mere visit to the moon of their own planet, was recent and had no significant follow-up. The speaker leaned forward, the table creaking under the movement, and asked in disbelief, "You mean to say that species ZZ9 successfully defended your sector against a war band?" No, they wouldn't have been capable of that, and as of now, they remain uncontacted and are unaware of what transpired. What I meant to say was that we asked specific individuals for help, 4 of them to be precise. This is making no sense, another member of the 12 interjected. We were facing annihilation or worse, being taken as slaves. We were desperate, so we tried to exploit an extraordinary trait we had observed in species ZN9, one that is deeply ingrained in their culture to a ridiculous extent. The commander was interrupted. But you were instructed to evacuate. Why didn't you leave? Commander Reese displayed a series of emotions before settling into confusion. We sent an emergency aid request as soon as we detected the incoming fleet. We had no means to evacuate. This revelation caused a stir as most of the 12 hastily requested more details of the emergency request on their handheld devices. A minute of deafening silence followed as they absorbed the fact that the aid request had been denied, deemed too risky given the dwindling number of military resources. Shall I continue? Reese asked, almost defiantly, which snapped the 12 back to attention. Yes, explain this special trait of species ZZ9. They say everything is a weapon to a human. We utilize this by sending them to an orbital debris field around Noreen, the gas giant and 3rd planet in our system. How did you go about that? We gave them... The commander was interrupted again, though the speaker made an apologetic gesture before continuing. Please, start from the beginning. By what criteria did you select these 4 humans? How did you establish initial communication? Reese glanced to the side, showing clear embarrassment. There wasn't time. The crew of the system hopper we sent to Earth simply looked for individuals in remote locations and questioned them about their willingness to help. I take full responsibility for this breach of first contact protocol. And you found such individuals? We did. The first few either panicked, declined, or both. They were sedated and released safely, but then the crew found a traveling ground vehicle with 4 humans inside who agreed to the request. They were brought back. The speaker remained silent for a moment before another member of the 12 asked, did they not object to such a monumental task, and were they untroubled by the knowledge of our existence or being taken from their planet? The crew reported that they were only mildly disturbed by our presence. Later, I learned that the 4 humans had military backgrounds and were trained to cope with unexpected situations. They were briefed on our situation, so they understood what their help would entail. However, one of them did need sedation before takeoff, at the insistence of the others. Other than that, the group seemed to handle everything well, with one even reported to be quite enthusiastic about the space flight. "And then you brought them to the debris field?" the speaker asked. "No, they were first brought to the base, where we provided them with everything our head engineer thought might be useful. I will ensure that a full list of the tools, devices and items given to the humans is sent to you. They made the best use of the engineer-helper head circlets, which, wait, they are biologically compatible?" The expression on Reese's face was one of mild frustration. "Our research shows some similarities in our brain physiologies. It seems we are similar enough for this kind of cerebral interface to work. But the more impressive part is what came after." Another member of the 12 interjected loudly, "This is a supremely dangerous development. These devices are meant to be species-specific and contain highly sensitive information about our technology. You cannot just put them in the hands of some underdeveloped species, especially if it turns out they can use them." Commander Reese trailed off into silence, taking a deep breath before continuing. "For us, it was about survival. It was also about protecting the human system, as they would likely have been the next target. We used everything we had to give us and them a chance. Honorable as your intentions may have been, this will leave a significant mark on your personal record. I would go so far as to—" The speaker silenced the agitated official with emotion, then addressed Reese. "Please, tell us what happened next." Among those 4 humans, there was a clear hierarchy. Their leader took over all communications and devised a plan based on the information we provided about the enemy and our available means of defense. They requested a ship capable of transporting them and their chosen equipment to the orbital debris field at Nareen. What kinds of armaments could be found there? What did the humans do with them? None and nothing? The debris field is the result of a failed gas mining operation and had become a dumping ground for the remnants of interstellar development projects by various civilian cooperatives until laws were passed to stop such practices. The human leader told us they weren't looking for firearms and even refused the meager weaponry we offered. No weapons? How did they mount any kind of defense? I can't say for certain what they did or how they made it work, but I will tell you what I saw." Reese paused to take a deep breath before continuing. With the knowledge provided by the engineer helpers, they revived an ancient long-range colony vessel in a shockingly short time. They then began extracting whole subsystems from other equally outdated ships. For a moment, Reese looked away from the camera, their tone shifting to one of disbelief. For some reason, they broadcasted music on low-range subspace emitters during their scrapping work. From what I understand of their homeworld, it was likely an assortment of pieces from there, possibly battle music. "Please do not digress," the speaker urged. "Yes, sorry." Reese composed themselves. "We watched them pull out rift engines that were likely defective and generations behind our current technology. They also seemed determined to collect spent power plants and computer cores. Relics, by our standards. All of these and more were brought into their ancient colony ship to create, well, something." The members of the 12 listened intently, but one finally blurted out, "What was it? What did they make?" "I honestly have no idea. Before they completed the external modifications on their ship, we lost subspace communication and visual contact with what the humans were doing. I first thought the warband had disrupted our systems as they neared our system, but it cleared up again without any intervention on their part. We had no insight into the humans' plan, so when the warband arrived, We were on the brink of blind panic. I saw hundreds of ships drop through the rift, and nothing stood between us and them. But just as the fleet began moving toward us, a broadcast came from the orbit of Narin. The warband was asked to surrender in rough terms. Our sensors picked up the active signatures of about 40 ships in orbit, which the warband likely interpreted as the local resistance force. They immediately changed course to Narin. But there was only one ship there, as became apparent when the humans' ruse broke down just as the warband came into close range of the gas giant. We could only watch helplessly as the warband started bombarding the larger wrecks within the debris field with their heavy ordnance. Then, two things happened at once. A massive atmospheric eruption occurred on Narin, ejecting megatons of gas toward the warband's fleet, and we lost subspace communication again. We discovered that this was due to a localized subspace interference field the humans had set up, which drowned out everything, including the pathfinding of rift engines. This blockage was only part of the humans' defense. The second part became clear later, as light from the events near Narin reached us. The warband's battleships were unable to escape, muted, likely very confused, and caught in a dense gas cloud. Then, those 4 humans rode into the midst of the fleet with their modified colony ship. For my entire life, I have never seen a ship this massive move so effortlessly. We deduced that they were using the gas as a transmission medium for some sort of concussive attack. One battleship after another was disabled by the colony ship as it zigzagged through their ranks, but just as we began to celebrate, a small number of warships recovered from their stupor and opened fire. Reese paused, and the silence that followed was heavy with anticipation. I think I should explain why the mining mission on Narin failed. Amongst the lightweight gases typically found in the upper atmosphere of gas giants, Narin contains significant amounts of volatile compounds brought up by massive stationary hurricanes, compounds that can be accidentally ignited. We watched as the entire fleet vanished in what I can only describe as an immense ball of fire. After the flames receded, we saw the warband's ships barely able to stabilize themselves, their exterior systems presumably melted into slag. And the humans? One of the 12 stammered. They're fine. We received a transmission just as local subspace cleared up. There was a departure through a subspace rift shortly after, which I wouldn't have expected from that modified colony ship. So, the humans are somewhere out there, I guess. How did they do that? The speaker asked, almost to themselves. How could they stop a warband with a single ship and survive? Another of the 12 threw in, did they truly suffer no casualties? Yes, there were no deaths, which is why we need to make another request for emergency aid. What? Why? Reese waved their arms in explanation. Because while we took in the survivors, we cannot possibly accommodate some 3,000 refugees. What are you talking about? The speaker asked. The warband surrendered. That's why we won. When you said no casualties, yes, I meant on both sides. I'm fairly certain the humans were very careful to use only non-lethal means to disable the warships. But now, we have a large number of people here begging to stay planet-side, as they claim to be terrified of space. So we need supplies. 2 of the 12 tried and failed to say something, while another simply stared wordlessly. Finally, the speaker broke the silence and weakly asked, "Can you put us in contact with those humans?" "I think so," Reese replied, holding up a piece of paper. "In their last transmission, they told us to ask for their help again if we, or someone we knew, came under attack. They gave us a string of numbers, which they said is the key to identifying them within some communication system used on their planet." "Did they say anything else in that transmission?" "Well, they thanked us for the equipment we provided, and then the group leader said something about having great fondness for a plan that comes together. I'm not sure about my translation, though." After exchanging glances with the other members of the 12, the speaker sat up straight and instructed, That will be all for now. We need to review this new information and will certainly have more questions for you. In the meantime, compile a full report of the incident and begin investigating this human communication technology. Consider your supply request granted. It will be processed as soon as you submit it. Commander Reese made a gesture of acknowledgement, and the view screen flicked off, leaving the historic room in silence.